This is Binghamton Now on News Radio 1290 WNBF Binghamton and WNBF.com.
I'm Bob Joseph. This is Binghamton Now for Thursday, July 25th, 2024. We're on the air live and local, ready to talk about the issues involving Binghamton and beyond. Call us right now and talk. WNBF. Number is 607-772-1290. There always is plenty to talk about on Binghamton Now. If you want to talk about local issues or presidential politics, you have a choice. It's a local program, but so many people are talking about what's going on with the election. It'll be here before you know it. Some people will probably be voting early, and others will wait until November 5th to vote in person. And developments continue to happen quickly. And who knows what might transpire today? You think you've been surprised by what's gone on over the past month? Well, more surprises are ahead. We can't promise a surprise today, but we can guarantee, I can guarantee you, between now and Election Day, which is still a little over 3 months away, there'll be some very big surprises. You could bet on it, if you bet. Last night, the nation had an opportunity to listen to President Biden, and let's just listen to the first few seconds.
My fellow Americans, I'm speaking to you tonight from behind the resolute desk in the Oval Office. In this sacred space, I'm surrounded by portraits of extraordinary American presidents.
All right, the first thing that you can tell is they didn't tell everyone in the room to mute their phones. All right. So that's how they operate. We'll talk more about the speech as we go on. Let's take a phone call here on this Thursday morning. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Good morning there, Bob. It's Dave from Vestal. How's it going?
It's going very well. Thank you.
Good. Hey, Bob, you know, I had to run this by you. I watched it during the evening more than once, and every time I saw it, I got sick to my stomach. Watching the desecration of our flag, Bob. I don't know about you and other people out there, but I'm so tired of seeing it, Bob. And, you know, Trump says mandatory 1-year jail sentence when you do that. Bob, I think they'd be getting off easy. They should be shot on sight. I feel that strongly about it. That's terrible. And these people, Bob, get them the hell out of the country. I mean, they got Palestinian flags. They're pro-Hamas, anti-American, and they're allowed to stand at the Capitol and do that? They're pouring lighter fluid on our... Bob, pour lighter fluid on them. Make a bonfire out of them. I'm getting tired of seeing.
All right. Well, I'll reel you in right now. No violence. Don't advocate violence.
Oh, all right.
This is a radio program where violence is not going to be advocated. I gave you a little bit of leeway, and now I'm shutting it down. And this goes just guidance for future callers on the program. I don't want to hear anything about advocating violence.
All right. Well, I'm a little carried away there, Bob.
Well, not a little, a lot. That kind of violence, there's no place for the type of violence you spoke of in the United States of America.
Is there any place for doing what they do to our flag, Bob? Should that be allowed? What do you think?
Would I burn the flag? No. Have I ever burned a flag? No. Will I ever? No.
The big question is...
But for you to come on the air on a live radio program in the United States of America and advocate violence, I find that to be, can I be blunt? Just wrong.
Okay. can I ask you one more question? Do you defend the right of a person to do that to our flag?
It's a protected right. I believe it's a protected right. Have you heard of something called freedom of speech? I believe there have been court cases that have determined that's the right of Americans. Do I support, do I encourage people to burn the flag, the American flag? No. But have courts determined they have a right to do it? I believe they have.
Would you support a 1-year jail sentence for people that did it?
No.
You wouldn't?
If they have a right to do it, let me look it up now. I shouldn't have to do this, Dave. But here we go. You know, you should do the homework. Don't put me in this awkward position.
I know they have the right, Bob. I don't have to do the homework. I know they have the right to do it.
Right. It says right here. This is the United States government. The ruling, yes. A Supreme Court ruling. So I didn't rule it. The Supreme Court ruled it because it's symbolic speech. So if you engage in protected speech in this country, then you're not going to go to jail. And you're not going to get shot, as somebody recommended on the program. Now, that's the type of thing. Now, you have, I'll say this, I'll be the quickest, or I will acknowledge you have a right to say, because you have freedom of speech too, that people who burn the American flag should be shot. You're not going to be saying it on this program. If it ever happens again, I don't usually make such a dramatic announcement. If you ever talk about shooting someone again, saying it's okay to shoot someone for burning a flag, then you'll have to take a time out.
Okay, man.
It's
fair enough.
I'm looking at it. I didn't make the ruling. It's a ruling. Look it up on your computer. See, you even knew it. So you want to incarcerate people for exercising their right to free speech. Or worse, as you said earlier, you want to shoot them.
I said if I had my way, Bob.
Why?
Right.
Why would you shoot someone?
Well, there's many reasons why anyone would shoot somebody, and some of them are good reasons, and a lot of them are bad reasons.
This doesn't sound like a good reason to me. I'm trying to employ a certain amount of logic and common sense, and maybe it's just impossible. Why would you shoot someone for burning the flag?
Because our flag means everything to us. Doesn't it to you?
Yes.
Okay.
And if someone burns the American flag, it's painful for me to see. I saw the video too. It's painful for me to watch the American flag being burned. And as painful as it was, I didn't think that, boy, someone should shoot them.
Well,
where is your sense of propriety?
Well, but I got to be honest with you, Bobby. You know, I went through. I thought worse than that, but I won't even go over it because I know I'll be.
Yeah, thankfully, you know, you may wind up getting a timeout anyway because you're laughing about it. And again, it's your right. It's your absolute right. In this country, you have a right, a First Amendment right, to say stuff like that. And I defend your right to say stuff like that. I will not encourage or condone that type of commentary on this program. This is a family program. There are kids listening.
Okay. That's fair.
Yeah. No, I understand people are very, very angry to see anytime they ever see our flag burned. I understand it's emotional, but I also understand why even when we see scenes like this, we need to exercise common sense and restraint. violence is not the answer.
Changing the laws, will that help?
You want the law changed? You want the law changed so somebody winds up with a mandatory 1 year in jail for burning the American flag.
Oh, yeah, Bob. Like I said, that's getting off too easy. As far as I'm concerned, the way I feel about the flag.
We know how you feel.
Right.
And
Right.
Doesn't really bear repeating because everybody heard it. It's out there. The kids, the adults, the grandmothers, the great-grandparents.
Is it worth a year, Bob, you think?
No.
It's not.
As I said, no, it's protected speech. This activity is based on a landmark Supreme Court case which deals with First Amendment protection of flag burning as symbolic speech. So it's protected. Now, someday, the way the Supreme Court is shaping up, this may actually compel more people to vote in November. The way the Supreme Court is shaping up, someday, a future court ruling could reverse what was decided in Texas v. Johnson and some of the other cases. So, again, I can't predict what the court will do. I mean, we know what the court has done. The current court, obviously, is a lot different than courts of the last few decades. So, going forward, depending on how the election goes in November, the Supreme Court could reverse itself on this. Personally, I don't think that the Supreme Court would, but you never know. You never know. I mean, if Jeanine Pirro winds up on the Supreme Court, all bets are off. All bets are off. Regarding this, regarding speeding in Tioga County, regarding everything.
Were that to happen, then would you agree with a 1 year sentence?
I wouldn't agree with it if it's the law. If the Supreme Court makes that the law of the land or says people should be put in jail for what is at this moment, it's protected speech. The reason why there are protections in the Constitution, it's to protect unpopular speech. And certainly burning the flag is perhaps one of the most unpopular forms of speech you can think of.
We can protect eagles. We can't protect our flag, though, right? You can go to jail for shooting an eagle, but you can't for burning our flag. Makes sense, doesn't it?
Well, I'm not the court. I am not the court. We'll see what the court does in the future. And again, this is why, not just this case, but a lot of other issues ultimately are going to hinge on what happens in the November election. Elections have consequences, and one of the biggest consequences is the person who is president is in a position to nominate members of the U.S. Supreme Court, and ultimately that can have a lasting impact on our laws. It's 10:23 at News Radio WNBF. Again, a caution: if you come on the program and advocate violence, your call could potentially be terminated instantly. On the other hand, you can still call and talk about nonviolence. 607-772-1290. I'm Bob Joseph. 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. All right, this is going to be a Gary segment. At least the next two callers are Gary. First, to the west side. Gary, you're on the air.
Good morning, Bob. I got to tell you, I love 80s music, that little bumper. 80s music does it for me. Now, I can hear in Dave's voice, how he feels. He's a little over the top with the response, but, that's just the feeling that people have with the American flag. We love America that much. We really do. Now, you could always, I don't know, I didn't see the video. I don't know who the people were. Were they Palestinians that did this, Bob, that were burning a flag?
I don't know.
Was it in the Capitol?
It was at the Capitol. I don't know who they were. There were no names given, no hometowns. I have no idea. And
Okay.
And by the way, I'll hasten to say, it was in the United States of America, so I didn't see
Americans, right?
Well, could be Americans, could be guests. I don't know, but at least one American flag was burned, and there was video of it. And no, I didn't like to see it. But as far as who was doing it, to me, it was irrelevant. If that's all they did was burn the American flag, even as disgusting or as distasteful as I might find it, based on the Supreme Court ruling, they can't be arrested. That's not against the law because it's protected speech.
Correct you are. Now, let's just say they were, I don't know, pick a country, right? Let's say they were Palestinians. You could take the Palestine flag and burn that in front of them. And then that would be a solution. Not that I would suggest that. But, Bob, I did just suggest that. I'm sorry. But, the outside, Donald Trump having outside rallies. Right, so the danger involved with that, there's something new. Well, it's not really new anymore. It's been on the scene for a while. They're called drones. And, they use drones to kill political leaders in other countries. Drones could be used that way in America, too. I mean, that's very dangerous. Outside, how are you going to protect against drones? I was speaking with somebody yesterday about, we got defenses against that. Oh, yeah, we got Secret Service to protect the president, too. How did that work out? Not the best. And we always say we have the best of everything until we use it and see that it's not really the best. It might be half as good as we think it is. Do you think that drones are something to be concerned about?
Sure. Even if you're holding an indoor event. Eventually, drones are going to pose a threat. I think they do pose a threat even now if you're holding an event indoors, just because they haven't come up with a drone yet, to my knowledge, that can injure and kill people inside buildings doesn't mean that they aren't working on it. Human innovation is fascinating, and human ingenuity can be used for good and bad. So I suppose someone somewhere is working to develop drone technology that can create havoc even for people who think they're safe indoors. I think it may eventually come to a point where a lot of political rallies just won't be held anymore. Or maybe they will be held and we'll just have to wait and see how it goes. Because no security effort is going to be 100% successful. So,
right.
I guess
lasers. Right?
There's always going to be something.
There's always going to be something.
There could be whatever technology, chemical technology, other types of technology that germ warfare. I mean, people are great. People can come up with some of the greatest things and contribute to our world in a positive way, and they can do just the opposite. So, as far as having plenty of live and big events, well, I don't think much of big events. I've already said on multiple occasions here, I don't like crowds. And one thing is, with a crowd, whether it's indoors or outdoors, a crowd is difficult to control. So even something that was not intended to harm someone, a candidate or whatever, could ultimately get out of hand. I mean, we've seen the way crowds can behave, mob mentality or whatever. If you've got a crowd, there's only a certain number of security people you can have assigned to any event. So I don't know what the answer is, but if the Secret Service wants to be honest about it, the Secret Service would have to say honestly, we cannot 100% protect candidates or office holders at outdoor events, and we might not be able to do it indoors. And so they have to go forward that is, the people who might be target of people who are against them for some reason, they have to go forward with the knowledge you're taking a risk. I mean, when you drive a car, you know you're taking a risk. You could be in a crash. I mean, an office holder could die while being whisked in a motorcade from the airport to the venue. Or an office holder could die in a plane or a helicopter crash. There's a risk. It's safer, as they say, as some detractors would say, it might be safer to campaign from your basement.
Bob, I gotta ask, when this first happened, and by the way, the assassination attempt is like secondary news already. I mean, it's incredible how we move on. But anyway, from what I've heard is that the Secret Service creates a perimeter around the area that's going to be used. And then outside of that, now you're in the police, they're in control of doing that. And from what I heard, I don't know if it's true or not, but these buildings were outside of the perimeter of the Secret Service, and it was under the local police control to secure those buildings. Did you hear anything about that, or is that the way you heard it, or no?
I haven't been following it that closely.
Really? An assassination attempt?
No. What the specific information as far as perimeter and stuff like that? Hey, what I was hoping would emerge on Monday when the now former Secret Service director was testifying before Congress, I was hoping to hear some straight answers to the questions that she...
Oh, please.
Well, I know.
No.
Well, then that's
People
why...
don't tell the truth in those situations. It's all...
but I'm saying there have been so many different news reports involving sources that I can't say are trustworthy sources. So you're telling me you've seen news coverage that talks about very specific stuff from sources you think are 100% accurate?
Not that. No. I don't think anything's 100%.
Okay, that's my
point. I don't know what's going on.
I am not going to spend a lot of time looking at a blizzard of news reports that keep coming out. Some might be properly reported with sources who know what they're talking about, and inevitably some are completely bogus. I've seen that.
How do we know the difference?
That's what I'm saying. I can't tell the difference. I don't have the time. I can't, on my own, corroborate some of these things. Too many
that goes for every story, doesn't it?
Yes, but
now it goes for every story.
And we've seen in the aftermath, the JFK killing serves as a good example. So 60, unbelievably, nearly 61 years after President Kennedy was killed, I still don't think I know the whole story. I know I don't know the whole story. And there's another interesting thing. President Trump had said
he was going to release
all the information, and he never did.
Right.
So there's an interesting question. Why? And it was relevant before what happened in Butler County at his rally, but still it takes, I think, on an even greater significance. Why did Donald Trump not follow through on his pledge to release all of the documents related to November 22nd, 1963, after he said he would?
Maybe the president isn't the most powerful person. Maybe there's someone behind the scenes that's more powerful that told him, don't release that.
I don't know. Maybe the next time he's on 60 Minutes, Leslie Stahl will ask him. Gary from the South Side, good morning. Gary from the South Side gave up. All right. Hi, Grant from the town of Maine. You're on the air.
Hi, Bob. I always enjoy your show. Of course, I don't always agree with you or anybody, but about this flag burning thing, I think it's despicable. I think it's disgusting. I wouldn't burn anybody's flag. I wouldn't want to offend anybody or anything. I wouldn't even burn a Nazi flag, even though I might want to, because I'd be probably afraid that some white supremacists would come after me and kill me. So
there's a good point. I wouldn't burn any flag Of course, I wouldn't burn the American flag. I wouldn't burn any flag that symbolizes anything, because the problem, and it's not unique to today, but I think it's the worst. Maybe it's worse than it ever has been. Problem is, if you burn a flag, whether it's an American flag or a flag of a different country or a flag that's symbolic of something to some person, someone could be motivated to kill you. And I don't want to be killed. First, I would work, if I have differences with people about policies or whatever, I will work to discuss it. I am not going to try to cause so much potential pain by burning a symbol they hold dear. And my guess is people of each country and also people of specific groups hold dear specific flags. So I can easily imagine someone like our first caller saying, if a certain flag is burned, then they think the proper reaction is to shoot the person who burned that flag, and I vehemently disagree. But that's just me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. Don't pull the tiger's tail. Don't spit on Superman's cape. Stuff like that.
Yes. Yeah, and that's the thing. I now, as a host of this program, working on a station called WNBF, I realize there are a lot of people who don't agree with me. But I'm not going to do anything to get people so angry that they can't be reasonable. I want to discuss things. I think I'm not in the business of ever trying to persuade someone to change their position. I think people should keep their position. Even Dave, as reprehensible as I think his position is that he expressed, I also, in one way, understand where he's coming from. And so I'm not telling him to change his position. I am saying that anybody who comes on this program and talks about responding with violence, the call is going to be terminated.
Yes, there does need to be discourse. There needs to be the ability to agree or disagree with somebody. You can do it in a peaceful way. You don't have to be violent. I'm not a violent person. I do think that there are people, even in our government. I'll make an example. I don't like to name names, but Maxine Waters told people to go into restaurants, get in people's faces. I think that's despicable. I think maybe she should have been even brought up on charges for that, because she was advocating violence by doing that. And I don't know what was in her head at the time, but I think there's some people in our government that I think of Ilhan Omar. I think of Rashida Tlaib. People who advocate, who actually support Hamas and terrorist groups. I think that's a horrible thing, but they have the right to do it. But to advocate violence, I think, is a terrible thing. It should not be done.
Well, I agree with that. As far as whether laws have been actually violated by any of those you mentioned, I really don't know. Since I am not an attorney, and I think I know a little bit about some laws. I mean, whether they're local, state, or federal laws. But since I am not an attorney, and will never be an attorney, and never will be a prosecutor, I don't really know from the people you mentioned or other prominent public officials if anything that they've said or done is something that could be prosecuted. That would be up to, well, if it involved a federal crime, potentially, the Justice Department, or at the state level, then it's up to local prosecutors. But I do believe when crimes appear to have been committed, I do believe charges usually should be filed, because what we have in this country right now is a system with, I guess, millions of laws and regulations that are not being consistently enforced.
Yes, I'm sure that's true. Well, they accused Donald Trump of inciting violence, and I don't think he did.
Well, it's one thing to say because of a person's language that you think the words that were used help to incite violence, and that may or may not be, but I don't know that anything Donald Trump ever said was actually something that would be against the law. I mean, I guess they tried. They tried and they failed. So I don't know. If people actually their actions rise to the level of where it appears to be criminal, then I say prosecutors then would have an obligation to file charges and take it where it goes, because this applies at all levels, including on the roadway. I mean, the people who are speeding right now, going 90 or 100 miles an hour on the highways in Broome County, I would say 98% of them aren't going to be caught or charged today. So it's selective enforcement of the laws we have on our books.
Yes. Yeah, you got to watch out for those road rage people. They can be really
well, that's what I worry about. Road rage, flag rage, all rage. I mean, thank you for your call. Rage is dangerous. I know that's not a news flash. Of course it's dangerous. And there are people who are so angry right now that their rage might be uncontrollable. And I don't know what to do about it. If you're so enraged that a video of people at the nation's capital burning a flag makes you want to resort to violence, I say that's a problem. To be angry is not a problem. Seeing those images can make me angry, but it does not make me want to resort to violence. It's 10:44. I'm Bob Joseph. It's Thursday morning on News Radio WNBF. Teresa in Binghamton, you're on the air.
Good morning, Bob. How are you this wonderful morning?
I am well. How are you?
I'm good. I just want to let you know 2 wrongs don't make a right. You know, if somebody's burning a flag or going out and kill somebody doesn't mean you have to do it.
I agree. I think there are ways when somebody is trying to provoke you, there are ways to respond that could actually surprise them and without violence, because in the end, someone who burns a flag and then that person winds up injured or worse, then there are going to be ongoing repercussions. And I say you haven't proved a thing by responding to their provocation. I think that's a large reason why some people do that sort of thing. They're trying to get a rise out of you. Just like, say, if you're driving down the street and somebody flips you off. They're trying to provoke you. And if you're able to behave in a mature adult fashion and not respond to the provocation, you wind up showing them. You become, I'm sorry to say, the bigger person, actually the better person for not, for not saying, oh, well, you were trying to make me angry, and I'll admit I'm not happy, but I'm not going to do what you think I'm going to do.
That's right. And everybody's going to remember, you might think you're better than other people, but nobody is perfect.
No one is. No one is. And I have to say, every day, believe it or not, Teresa, every day I hear people say things that I don't like. Sometimes I see people do things I don't like. And basically, almost all the time, certainly when I see people do things I don't like, I usually just think to myself, oh, I really don't like that. But I usually don't confront them, because confrontation typically is not going to get you anywhere.
No, that's what everybody wants, is confrontation. Are you going to do it my way or get out? You know?
Yeah. So, I always, my counsel to people is, you are right to be angry. If you see something you don't like, flag being burned, or someone driving like a maniac, or someone saying something that's offensive, you do have a right to be angry. And I'm not arguing with your feelings. You don't have a right to hurt the person or to kill the person.
I understand that.
Yeah. So
I agree with you. It's a family program, and people should watch what they say on it, especially in the summer with the kids home.
Well, that's it. Our audience in the summer soars. I mean, the younger demographics increase dramatically in the summer because during the school year, they're in the classroom learning how to be good Americans.
Yeah.
So, all right,
Bob. Keep up the great work, and I love listening to you.
Thank you. It's 10:50 at WNBF. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
This is the California Bar Association, Matt Ryan.
Well, if it pleased the court.
Hey, I just wanted to, one of your listeners, after that guy from Kirkwood guy, he's calling, just says, Donald Trump has been repeating that the vice president is dumb, and that it's true, she did fail the bar exam the first time, but the California bar pass rate for first time in 2019, she took it way back in 1990, I believe it was, but the California bar pass in 2019, one statistic I looked up was only, and it's pretty consistently, way under 50%, 43%. Many people, because of the circumstances, like I was lucky because I had a little money stashed away. I didn't have to work right after I got out of law school. I took off those 2 months, and all I did, I actually went to Albany because I knew I'd be tempted to play golf and hang out with my friends. I went and isolated myself and studied nonstop for 2 months, and I passed it. Some people don't have that luxury. But once they fail it, they realize they have to figure out a way to, do better. And so, by the way, FDR failed the bar exam the first time he took it. So there's a pretty good example of a tremendously successful president who failed the bar exam.
Well, I imagine a lot of people who turned out to be either excellent attorneys or excellent elected officials did not succeed the first time they took the bar exam.
First of all, I will tell you, there's so many things that they test you on that you're never going to have no interest in, and they're pretty technical, really, really esoteric types of law, and you have to learn this stuff just to take the exam, and you'll never think about it again because they test you over the whole broad spectrum of the law profession, and some of the stuff people have unless you're somebody in business, you just have no interest in it, and you're not going to practice that type of law, so you basically have to immerse yourself in it to learn enough to pass the bar and never think about it again.
So what bar exam did you pass?
Oh, the New York State.
Oh, okay. That's what I thought, but I wasn't sure. And you passed it on the first try.
Yeah.
All right.
But like I said, that's because I had, and actually our law school is a new progressive law school that the bar rate was low the first few years, and then they realized because we had a lot of returning students who had been involved in, there was CUNY Law School, their whole motto was law in the service of human need, and attracted a lot of people who hadn't been in school for quite a while. They were looking at second careers, like a whole bunch of people in my class were, had finally, and the law school was only $3,000 a year. So it was designed for people who I always wanted to be a lawyer, but I didn't think I could afford to go to school.
But you just said something, because I was about to ask you a question, and for those who don't know, we're speaking with former Binghamton Mayor Matthew Ryan. My question that I was just about to spring on you when you said that, what prompted you to want to be a lawyer? Why did you have an interest in the law?
Well, my whole life I got brought up in actually an FDR. My father was an FDR Democrat from Philadelphia, moved up here, got a good job with 3M Company, he didn't have any education. He wasn't even a high school graduate, and he became the best salesman, corporates, to the bigger distributors in the whole country for 3M Company. And but he instilled in us the importance of education. But quite frankly, I took quite a while to go. I was interested in some other things. I was kind of disillusioned after Robert Kennedy got killed and Martin Luther King all in the same year, and I kind of was doing my own thing. But then I was always involved in things behind the scenes. I was doing helping tenants, even though I wasn't a lawyer. There was a clinic, and we learned the tenant law, and we were helping tenants and stuff like that. And I always thought that I could do better if I was a lawyer. And then my friend Joe Rosenberg, who was in the first graduating class, who was a great tennis player, and I was a tennis player. I played for SUNY B. He came to town. He's a good friend of my friend Mike Starks, and he said, "Why don't you go to law school?" I go, I'm 36 years old. How am I ever going to afford that? I can't go a couple $100,000 in debt. He goes, "It's $3,000 a year, including your books." I go, "Oh my God." So that's how I ended up going. I always wanted to do it, but I didn't think I could afford it. And I found a school. It turns out CUNY Law School, that's why 75% of the people that go to CUNY Law School go into public service law. In most schools, it's 5%. So I found the right school for me, and that's that story.
So when you were a law student, is that when you got arrested by the cops in New York City?
No, that was 1969.
Okay, well, I'm trying to develop a timeline here for my book.
I went to law school in 87.
Oh, okay.
I got arrested. I was 36 when I went to law school. I was 18, half that age when I got arrested in New York City. And that was when my first year at Wagner College.
Did you only get arrested once in New York City?
Yes.
And in my recollection, you're telling us the tale. Once was sufficient. As I recall, the way you told me you were treated when you were arrested as a protester in New York City, you didn't like the treatment you received.
Well, quite frankly, it was. You go back and look in the annals of, if you look it up, it was called the Waldorf Astoria riot. It was a riot by the police against the protesters. 16 or 17 police officers who were on they hadn't fulfilled their, 6-month probationary period. They were fired from the police department for what they did to people. And what they did to me, I was running away from. They were trying to grab everybody and beat them with sticks. I ran behind St. Patrick's Cathedral, which was close to where the protest was, and they had a nice-looking hippie woman, 4 cops, and they were throwing her back and forth between each other. I stopped and looked at them and go, "What are you guys doing?" They let her go, and they beat me till I was unconscious, had to have 16 stitches in my head. Then when I got up on my feet, the guy put a billy club in between my legs and tried to really hurt me. I was as if unconscious was not enough, and then took me 2 blocks away to a bus and handed me off to a cop who saw Patrolman Blackwell was his name. He saw nothing what I did that night and handed him off, and he was the guy that was supposed to testify against me at trial, and they charged me with a felony, inciting a riot. And it charged everybody, 70 people, with inciting a riot. I ended up leaving New York City because I quit school and was involved totally in the anti-war movement, but I needed to get some money, so I took the postal exam, got 100. I went to get put on this. I was going to live in New York and be involved and they told me I couldn't get hired because I still had that case pending. And I said, I haven't been convicted of anything, and I kept demanding that I be able to talk to somebody higher, and I ended up in Basil Patterson's office, who was head of the post office in New York City at the time, who's Governor Patterson's father, who ran for lieutenant governor himself. And anyway, in fact, he ran, and John Burns was his running mate. But so there's a lot of history there. But anyway,
well, it's a remarkable story. I appreciate your sharing it with us. Unfortunately, we're at the end of our segment. As the former Binghamton Mayor Matthew Ryan, live and local on News Radio WNBF. More calls as they come in at 607-772-1290. Love to talk with you. We're here till noon. This is a daily endeavor. Remember, it's live and it's local. Most of the callers are local. Some, of course, are out of state. And every once in a while, when you least expect it, somebody will call from another country. Morning, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hi, my name's Dan.
Morning. And where are you?
I'm here in Binghamton. I just wanted I was listening to this Mr. Ryan there talk about, his history and everything, and I was wondering if I could get on and just talk about what I've done since high school. And,
Yeah, why would anybody want to know what you have done since high school?
That's the whole thing. I was trying to figure out, why would anybody want to know what this Matt from Binghamton has done since high school.
Oh, okay. So you're a former elected official, or what have you done that would make you in any way newsworthy to people in Binghamton?
Plumber. I'm a master plumber. I own my own business.
All right. And where did you grow up?
Right here in Binghamton.
Well, what part of the city?
Oh, South Side. Went to North High and went on to SUNY Binghamton, and went over to Cortland, did that for a year, and then I went to Potsdam State. I was a recreation director up in the Adirondacks for a year, and lost my job on a budget cut and got into plumbing. Went to Canton Tech for a year, plumbing, heating, and pipe fitting.
So did you at any time get any training through a union, or did you get training on your own?
No, I actually went to Canton Tech there, as I said, and then I worked under a master plumber for 6 years and got my master plumber's license and started my own business and retired when I was 55 and went on. I got my New York State teacher's certificate, taught at BOCES for a couple of years, and didn't do well in captivity. I mean, program was fine. I just thought I'd move on. And I'm still doing what I went back to running my own business. And that's really about it. I'm still doing what I used to do and enjoying it. And I'd just like to say one thing about politics. It's hard for me to see where anybody other than women should be in politics at this point.
Why?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't seen men do much in politics, and I think it's about time. It's too bad Hillary can't get in it again. Well, she was terrific. She beat Trump by 3 million votes, and I really believe Miss Harris will really do well and hopefully straighten things out. I mean, because Trump wants to change history, and he'd be the first person that ever changed history. I thought, this country is a multiracial democracy. We can't go backwards. We got to deal with what we have. And I just wanted to say, Bob, thanks a lot for letting me, just talk about myself.
Oh, yeah. Well, thank you. At first, by the way, I'm always very interested in the stories of people, as perhaps you've noticed over the years. Sometimes when I have a guest on and maybe they want to talk about what their current job is, or maybe they're talking about a special event. If they're new to the area or new to the program, sometimes I wind up asking them, tell me a little bit about yourself, including where did you grow up? whether it was around here or whatever. And to me, it's fascinating where people grew up and some of the things that help shape their worldview and help them decide what they wanted to do. Because so, and so at first when I said, well, why would anybody be interested? Have you been an elected official? Well, still everybody, as I think it was Steve Hartman on CBS Evening News some years ago when he did a segment, Everyone Has a Story. It is true. Everyone has a story. If only we asked the right questions so we could bring out the story to have people share.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. I tell my students, it takes a little bit of courage, a little disclosure, let people know who you are and what you're up to, and, a little reciprocation, and everybody's interesting. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
That's the way to look at it.
Absolutely.
Bob, thanks for your time. It's awful kind of you to hear me out. And I thought I was at least as interesting as Mr. Ryan. And I agree. Anyone else that would call in. I think anyone else that wants to call in, and you've got this great platform there. It's like you said, to echo your words, it would be really interesting. It makes the whole thing work.
Thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye.
11:17 at WNBF. Hey, we're a family. I say that. I mean, we're not family, but it's a radio family. It's extended family. So thank you. 607-772-1290. How long have I really been here, though, at WNBF? Sometimes it seems like I've been here for a few years. Just think. Every once in a while, someone will come in and there'll be a guest, and they'll say, I remember hearing you on the radio when I was a kid, or my parents listened to WNBF and you did the news. I'm thinking, yeah, it's true. I've been doing this reporting for a long time and actually now hosting this program for nearly 13 years. The reality is, although the program that we now call Binghamton Now didn't officially get named till January of 2012, I first started doing the talk show in August 2011. So think about that. So I've been taking phone calls here at the station for nearly 13 years. Not every day. There's been some other people, of course, who've done it along the way. But for the most part, over the course of 13 years, I've been talking on this radio station and taking calls at 607-772-1290. It's 11:19 on a Thursday morning. Hi, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Tom, currently in Binghamton.
Yeah, welcome. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Yesterday or the day before, I tried to call in, couldn't make it. You were talking about trains, and in the past, you've talked about different people have called in. Whatever happened to the little train at the Ross Park Zoo? Did they ever find out what happened to it by chance? Do you know?
Not specifically. I keep forgetting to follow up on that. I saw a newspaper photo, because I look at some of the newspaper archives, the Binghamton Press archives on a regular basis. And when I was doing a story or preparing, actually, for a story that I intend to do hopefully in the next couple of weeks, I came across a picture of a Binghamton Parks employee who was operating that train, but it didn't have lots of information, so I have no idea what the final straw was. I know they started having some safety issues. I think there were maintenance issues and at least a couple of derailments. I don't think anybody was ever seriously hurt, but I think ultimately the decision was made, having even a mini train at Ross Park was not the best way to spend city money.
True. I had friends of mine in from Kansas City last week, and we went out to dinner, and his brother was a local disc jockey, so that might refresh you a little bit. But he tells me that it's in the Kansas City Zoo.
Really?
Yes, he told me that came up in conversation that they maybe redid something on it, but it was in the Kansas City Zoo, and he's from he went to college and lived in the Kansas City, Independence, Missouri area, and he told me, which surprised me, that it was in the Kansas City Zoo. So you could probably check that out.
All right. Thank you for the tip.
Okay. Thanks, Bob. Have a great day.
You too. 11:21. Well, I had to go someplace. I want to go to Kansas City. Kansas City, here I come. I booked a next flight. Do we have direct service? Binghamton to Kansas City on Delta? Don't look at me that way. 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, always available on the WNBF app. Binghamton Now News Radio, WNBF, on a Thursday morning. Oh, we don't give the weather enough. You know, if they would build me a weather deck, I would probably do the weather more often. And I would do it from the weather deck. He said, unconvincingly. No, I'm serious. Go ahead. You build me. How about this? We could get a deal. A weather deck and a news deck. And every day, I would do the news from the weather deck and the weather from the news deck. That's just the way I roll. Bob, you're on the wrong deck. Oh. Some things just aren't funny, are they? Here's the forecast from the National Weather Service. The gang headed by Dave Nicosia, high atop the mountain. It is the National Weather Service. Partly sunny today, high 80. Mostly cloudy tonight to start. Gradual clearing, low 56. Sunny tomorrow, high 81. And then sunny Saturday and Sunday. Saturday's high 86 and Sunday's high 90. Right now, 72. That's 22 Celsius at News Radio WNBF. Oh, and people say, but how come you don't tell us about the air quality anymore? Somebody tell you to stop? No, actually nobody did. Everybody loves learning about the air quality. So earlier today on First News Binghamton, I think when I first sauntered in here at about 6 this morning, the air quality was not all that good. I mean, it wasn't all that bad. They described it as moderate. The air quality index for Binghamton, when I started here this morning, about 5.5 hours ago, it was at 55. I have checked, and the air quality now has improved. So it's now good. 36 air quality index. So go ahead. Breathe all the air you want till they learn some way to tax it. It's 11:27. Good morning. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Joe of Greater Ithaca. Comment on flag burning.
Yes.
It seemed to me they're guilty of arson, damaging property, private property, somebody else's property, endangering the welfare of a minor. I'm sure there were children present, and what the other charge would be, but several charges like that they could be arrested for, and then brought in, you know.
All right. Well, you ought to be a police chief.
Well, I mean, they're breaking the law, aren't they? I
don't know. I wasn't there, so all I know is I saw a video. I don't know whose flag was being burned. I don't know protocol. never having been involved in one of these protests. So I don't know if the flag that was being burned was stolen, if it was a federal government flag, if it was, I guess, if it belonged to the United States government or a private party and somebody burned it. You're right. A law was broken.
Right, and it's arson too.
Well, I think in some cases you're able to burn stuff that belongs to you in some cases. On the other hand, maybe in D.C. there's a law that regulates outdoor burning. I don't know. As I mentioned earlier on the program, I'm not an attorney. I'm not a prosecutor. I am unfamiliar with most of the statutes that are in place in the District of Columbia. So, but you're right. I know people in law enforcement who've told me if they look hard enough, they can find something to charge you with.
Yeah, I don't think you got to look too hard in a case like this.
Well, it was D.C. Maybe they'll throw the book at those punks.
Well,
excuse me. That was uncalled for. I apologize for that. Maybe they'll throw the book at the protesters.
Well, they get hit with a book, that can hurt.
Well, I mean figuratively, not literally.
I was in a history class in high school where the teacher threw a book at someone. I mean, went right by my head there, and I don't know if it hit the other guy. I don't think it did. But, they've thrown the book at somebody.
Was that allowed in that school district? Seems to me there would have been some kind of regulation about educators hurling books at students.
Well, see, there was no damage done, so nothing for sure, unless somebody complained, with this.
Well, why didn't you file a complaint, or were you just mildly amused?
Well, kind of both, you know what I mean?
Tell me about the context, just briefly. So what could have been so egregious that it would have prompted an educator to hurl a book at someone they were charged with teaching? What transpired?
I don't think it amounted to anything, like one guy talking to another guy or something. But this teacher, okay, he was also a coach, all right? So I'll tell you something, all right? It's like when you can't teach your coach.
Oh, don't do that. Well, there goes our coaching audience.
Yeah, well,
don't do that.
This guy, when it was a history, what do you know about it? So we got in there, all right, and the first day, he says, you're going to learn about democracy in this country and other countries, a few things like that. He says, but in here, it's something like it's a whole dictatorship. I am in absolute control. I will blah, 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 like that.
Well, one of those teachers. Well, fortunately, fortunately, I never had the experience of enjoying that kind of teaching method. My teachers, maybe I was just really lucky. As I recall, I think all of my teachers were very competent, highly educated, and also fair. I mean, I liked some better than others, but I don't know that I had a single teacher who I didn't enjoy, and I always thought that their behavior in and out of the classroom was above reproach. So, but then again, hey, teachers are people too. So there's no doubt that on a bad day, perhaps a teacher could make, as they say, euphemism, make poor choices.
Well, we had different ones there.
You're right.
For things like
well,
that.
And I happen to hang out with a group of mostly retired teachers now, and each teacher, each educator that I have the pleasure of coming into contact with, they all have different approaches, or they employ different approaches during their careers. The other night, I'm not going to identify the school she works for, because I don't want her to be ostracized. I did meet a teacher in a local school district, and she had some interesting information about some stories I've done before. Was helpful. She actually has been teaching, I think she said for, I don't know if it's 15 years or whatever, maybe longer. I think longer. So I think she is in a position where she could actually retire. And I said, well, how much longer are you going to keep doing it? And I think she said something Well, I still like it, but I think she indicated that some of her friends who already have retired are encouraging her to get out of the profession too. But I thanked her for being a teacher, because I can't, as a person who is simply a reporter and a talk show host, I can't really appreciate what it must be like to be a teacher, especially these days.
The first thing you have to do is get control. If you don't have control, you won't get anywhere. And this includes, like, I knew someone that taught third grade and said, you first right in the beginning, you have to get control. And there's maybe a couple kids that'll really disrupt the whole thing if you don't. And they had student teachers just couldn't do it. They just started crying and left. I mean, they just weren't the type to be able to deal with it.
Yeah, well, I've heard that. I mean, one person I know, he actually told me how he starts every school year, and he had a very, very specific way of getting things going to really establish who's in charge here. Not in a mean way, but just in a way so anybody who may not have understood how things were going to go during the upcoming school year, they learned in the opening minutes of that class, I'm in charge, and so this is how things are going to go. That there's some things, it's not that it was a dictatorship, but it was definitely a situation and environment where there's one person in charge, and he was that person. And if people didn't respect the teacher in charge, then there would be consequences. And my understanding from speaking with him over the years, he typically had great success with his students because he laid the groundwork appropriately at the start of every school year. And also someone else I know who is still doing some substitute teaching locally, and so he has the joy of experiencing sometimes a wide array of students over the course of a school year. And it's interesting he also understands, especially if he's in a classroom with a group of students for the first time, he also understands as a substitute, you gotta be in command, or else substitute teachers are going to be taken advantage of, and things are going to be, shall we say, less than optimal. Little learning will be accomplished if a substitute's in charge, and I mean, ostensibly in charge, but not really in charge.
It's like your first day in prison. You have to set the tone. Well,
it's an interesting analogy.
Well,
depending on the school district, it may be
deal with the people. We had one teacher, and he was very well respected and liked, and did a nice job. And he was just out of the military, everything. And in fact, he taught electronics, and he brought books in the military, which were quite good, with his printer books. Anyway, it was all guys in the class, and they were screwing around just too much, and he just was just in a bad mood that day. So where we were, it was kind of like half underground, and the door there was no window in it, and it was like a foot thick, when he closes the door, which was unusual. And then he said, if there's an SOB in here that wants to go around, he says, I'm new to this. If I lost this job, no big deal. And he said, come on, now or never. With that, and it quieted down. They knew that wasn't going to happen, but boy, the respect, this guy, that he's capable of it, and so whenever he said quiet down, with us.
Well, hey, everybody has their own persona. Thank you. It's the story from Greater Ithaca, making contemporary news. It's 11:37. Bob Joseph with you on a Thursday morning. 607-772-1290 is the number. We're live at 92.1 FM, 1290 AM, streaming at WNBF.com. Hey, indeed. Hey, you're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
Hey, Vic from the Forks.
Hey, Vic, sorry the other day that I cut you off with such apparent nastiness. Yeah, I mean, a caller responded the following day. Yeah, so I didn't. I mean, I should have used that occasion when he brought it up to apologize, because the more I was thinking about it, I was driving home yesterday saying, well, there was a perfect opportunity to acknowledge the error of my ways. So on behalf of you and the entire listening audience, sorry that I didn't just give you a second to turn down the radio, so I apologize.
It wasn't even my radio, but I apologize, too, for the opinion I had of you for doing that, because I thought you cut me off because I said I wanted to respond to Vinny. And I don't even remember what it was.
No, but I can also understand why you might have felt that way, and probably a lot of the listeners could have perceived it that way. So, yeah, I don't know. I'd like to attribute it to the fact that I'm getting up very early in the morning this week, but then people would say, oh, great, you're one of those guys making excuses. So it really was an excuse for it. I mean, as I told the caller who brought it up, I do treat every caller differently, as you've learned over the years. I mean, and Matt from Binghamton has learned, and even sometimes Vinny has learned. Every caller and every situation's unique. So, if I do something that inexplicably irks a person who called, or for that matter, the audience, I mean, it's not by design. It's just, I'm human, and so as they might say, if I were testifying before a congressional panel and I was the Boeing CEO, I might be inclined to say, well, mistakes were made. So anyway,
I called about the flag burning.
Yes.
And I served my country in time of war, and to me, that's a very personal insult. It's not freedom of speech to burn a flag. I don't care what the Supreme Court said. It'd be interesting to know if it was a democratically controlled Supreme Court at that time. I will research that and let you know. But the reason why we should not burn a flag in protest or as a free speech tool or whatever is because millions of Americans have died for that flag, given life and limb for that flag. If you're protesting a president, put a suit on a dummy and burn it. Do that. Don't burn the American flag, because you're insulting every American who ever went to war, was ready to go to war, been to war, every veteran in this country you're insulting. And it's true, Bob, even veterans from the military go ahead and burn the flag in protest. I've seen it during Vietnam. I've seen it since, where they say, I'm a veteran and I hate this country. You can hate this country, but don't hate the ghost or spirit of the people who died and gave life and limb for that flag, because that's who you're disrespecting. You're not disrespecting America, because America has billions of flags, many, many flags in this country, and you're not going to get your point across by burning a flag. You're going to turn people away. Like I said, build an effigy, make a sign and burn it, because I'll tell you what, Bob, it's a hate crime if you burn a gay flag. It's a hate crime if you lay rubber over a gay pride flag in New York City. Those are gay hate crimes, not freedom of speech. What's the difference between burning a flag or laying rubber on a flag? But these are questions I can't answer, because there's so many people who have opinions about it. And it's just wrong to take the flag that represents the United States of America and burn it. If you don't like America, change it, but don't burn the flag. If you don't like America and you can't change it, get out.
All right. I appreciate your call. And also thank you for your service.
Thank you, sir.
It's 11:45 at WNBF. I'm Bob Joseph. Have a few minutes left. We probably squeeze in. Gee, if I was fast, I could squeeze in 5-7 calls. If I was fast. Not sure that I can do that. Here's an email I received. Actually, this was early this morning, before Binghamton Now began. Note from Joe from the South Side. Actually, former Councilman Joe Burns He wrote, the last time a president dropped out, 1968, it was Lyndon Johnson. I recall. Not vividly, because I was a kid, but I do recall. I think I watched the speech on TV a Sunday night. It was a Sunday night at the end of March, 1968. I actually had to look up the date. And it was the final day of March, 1968, a Sunday night. Joe Burns writes, that night, Senator Robert Kennedy was in flight and wasn't aware of what was happening. Former Binghamton Mayor John Burns played a part in this historic moment. And Joe Burns sent a story archived from the Tampa Bay Times. As soon as Kennedy's plane arrived at the gate, New York State Democratic Chairman John Burns, yes, the former Binghamton mayor, John Burns ran on board shouting, the president is not going to run. The president is not going to run. Kennedy, stunned, fell back into his seat, asked Burns to repeat himself, then said, you must be kidding. He and aides had discussed the possibility that Johnson might withdraw, but no one believed it was likely or might happen so soon. Beneath that excerpt from the article from the spring of 1968 is a photograph, a black and white photograph of Robert F. Kennedy walking with John Burns, the former mayor of Binghamton. Thank you, Joe, for sending that. Here's a story. I looked up some other stories from that Monday in the papers on Monday after Lyndon Johnson surprised people with his stunning announcement on TV on Sunday night that he wasn't going to run for another term. And here's a story by Jimmy Breslin, the famed New York City columnist. This specific story I found in a newspaper archive in the Toronto Star newspaper. I didn't go so far to look up I believe Mr. Breslin was writing for the Daily News back then. Dateline, New York. Dal Forsyth came in first. He is a young guy with black hair and glasses, and he works for Senator Robert Kennedy's office. And he came pushing onto the plane the moment the door opened, and he was looking around and shouting. Then John Burns, the New York State Democratic leader, came pushing in behind Forsyth, and Robert Kennedy was starting to get up from his seat in the front by the window, and John Burns, remember John Burns, the former Binghamton mayor, his face white, his mouth shaking with excitement, his eyes flashing behind horn-rimmed glasses, told it to him, the president is not going to run, Bob. It's former Binghamton Mayor John Burns speaking to Robert F. Kennedy. The president is not going to run, Bob. The time was 9:50 p.m. The date was March 31st, 1968. Robert Kennedy sat down. He looked at John Burns with those blue eyes that are set deep in his face. His face showed nothing. He just looked. The president's not going to run, John Burns said again. Now there were people in the aisle trying to get off the plane, and they were pushing into Forsyth and Burns, and Robert Kennedy was calling out, let's let these people out first so we can talk. So Breslin went on to write, Burns was hunched over with his hands in front of him and his tie coming out of his jacket and his hair mussed from running his hands through it. On the television, the last part of his speech, the very last part, he just said he was not going to run, would not seek or accept the nomination. We couldn't believe it. Robert Kennedy clasped his hands in his lap. His head came down a little bit. He spoke with no emotion in his voice. What do you think I should say? He said. He led with a question. Anyway, there's more to the Breslin column, including a little bit more about John Burns being with RFK on that night. Keeping in mind, that was April, well, column ran April 1st, 1968. So this sequence of events happened March 31st on the night, a Sunday night of March 31st, 1968. And of course, nobody knew what was going to happen in the next several weeks. Nobody was aware of the tragedy that was to befall Robert F. Kennedy and the nation. So the Breslin column here ends, let's see, so I'll just hop to the end. Ethel Kennedy asked John Burns, "What will you have?" "A Coke, please," Burns said. It was not the kind of a night where you go to the whiskey. So there. A Binghamton native and a former mayor was there on that historic night with Robert F. Kennedy. So thank you, Joe, from Binghamton Southside, Joe Burns, for sharing that one story from the Tampa Bay Times. And I see several other political reporters did their own versions of how Bobby Kennedy learned that Lyndon Johnson wasn't going to be running for another term. And almost all those accounts include some of the things that John Burns said. Looking at the headline, the giant headline on the front page of the New York Times on April 1st, 1968, it's a banner headline in some ways similar to the headline that appeared on the Monday morning after Joe Biden said he wouldn't run. So this headline says, "Johnson says he won't run, halts North Vietnam raids, bids Hanoi join peace moves." And they called it a surprise decision. There had been rumors. Circulating that Lyndon Johnson was not going to run for another term. But still, when he made that announcement, the televised announcement on a Sunday night, it really was a surprise. I think when we saw the message on Twitter this past Sunday, which, if I recall correctly, was tweeted out at 1:46 on Sunday afternoon. Now, I didn't know about it because I was trying to stay away from the news for a day or two, but I did have for some reason, the presence of mind to check Twitter right about 2 o'clock, and I saw a tweet from a former Binghamton TV reporter who is now working in Philadelphia. Or no, I misspoke. He's working now in Pittsburgh at KDKA TV. Ricky tweeted the statement that had been put out by Joe Biden. So that's how I saw it. I told a friend, "Hey, Biden has dropped out." So that was a surprise. Not a surprise, really, that he dropped out. It was a surprise, the timing, also a surprise that it came in the form of a tweet. So looking back at the front page of the New York Times in 1968, the morning after LBJ announced that he wasn't going to seek a second term, the story was by the legendary Tom Wicker. Dateline, Washington. Lyndon Baines Johnson announced tonight, "I shall not seek and I will not accept the nomination of my party as your president." Later, at a White House news conference, he said his decision was completely irrevocable. The president told his nationwide television audience, "What we have won when all our people were united, must not be lost in partisanship. I have concluded that I should not permit the presidency to become involved in partisan decisions. By the way, one other bit of history that I noted, since I also keep track of what was going on in this country 50 years ago on a pretty regular basis, because I like recalling what was going on half a century ago, both locally and nationally. So the headline on the front page of the Evening Press 50 years ago, on July 24th, 1974, so it was 50 years ago Tuesday, or Wednesday, 50 years ago Wednesday, headline said, "Court rules Nixon must give tapes." It was a major Supreme Court ruling, and that's when the newspaper actually had breaking news. This was breaking news. Dateline Washington, AP, the Supreme Court ruled 8-0 today that President Nixon must surrender White House tapes and papers wanted in connection with the Watergate cover-up trial. So a lot can happen in the summer. And then you know what happened a few weeks later. Didn't take long. Actually, not even a few weeks later. Hi, WNBF. You're on the air. What's your first name? Where are you calling from?
I'm John from Binghamton.
Hey.
And bigger news than what happened to a president in 1968 is what happened to a president in 2024. And that is the, descending of the Lord Almighty to the state of Delaware, because he did say that that's what it was going to take to get out of the race for president for 2025. So I don't know if anyone else had visions of that or eyes on that, but it apparently happened in Delaware. So that's truly bigger news than Lyndon Johnson for sure.
All right. Yeah, I remember him saying that. So, well, maybe the New York Post or the Daily News had better send some correspondence to the beach house and do some interviews, find out what really happened there. That's our program for today. My thanks to everybody who listened and everyone who called. I'm Bob Joseph. Have a great afternoon. You're listening to WNBF.